What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, joined as always by Connor Rogers. Unfortunately, we are back in the doctor's office with another post-game therapy, the fifth loss in a row for the New York Jets as the nuclear winter has arrived, as they lost to the New England Patriots 25-22 in a game that was a true bingo of incompetence and all of this stuff that all of us have been worried about and been talking about for a while. We're going to vent it all out. We're going to answer as many of your Discord questions as we can. And then somehow the Jets play again on Thursday. But CR, when it ends, it ends. And it really ended today in New England. How you doing? How you feeling?
It feels like winter is here, right?
Yep.
There's, of course, the improbable winning 8 of 9. Like, yeah, I get it. But it's just sometimes you got to stand back and realize a team is not a good football team, right?
Yep.
I think we have tried to buy in that, Devontae will fix this, Reddick will fix that, Rodgers will get up to speed with this guy, Downing will be an upgrade over Hackett, Ulbrich will give the team more energy. And the reality is some of those things have happened, but the Jets have glaring issues so much further and deeper than all of those things. And this is a bad football team. This is a bad football organization that is run by, unfortunately, people that it's run course. It's the ship has sailed on various plans and trying to, once again, fix issues at the foundation with poor craftsmanship. And today, you and I talked about this before we even hit record. And I've had a lot of hours to process this. I've done a 90-minute post-game show. It's such a weird feeling. It's almost that you look at it and go, okay, there's a world where it's better to really just shit hits the fan immediately rather than they kind of float it around and they try this. They don't make the playoffs and they try this again with everybody next year and it goes just as bad. And then now you're just hopelessly meandering and wandering. Sometimes you really got to hit rock bottom. And my days as a Jet fan and Jet analyst as an adult, which I really considered started in 2010. That was my freshman year of college. Ironically, the last time the Jets were good. I'm now a 32-year-old man with a wife and a home and a career that I love. But the Jets have done nothing of note since then. It feels like this is rock bottom. And that's remarkable for an organization that has missed on multiple top 3 picks at quarterback, that has had their quarterback's jaw smashed in the locker room, that there's so many different nonsense circus-like acts. And yet this, because of where the expectations were and how it looks, and that Joe Douglas got all 6 years of his contract and is on a historically bad pace right now, historically bad pace. And the way they lose, they can't even see in front of them that they don't have a kicker.
Yeah.
It's
the most basic 101 thing in football.
Anyone that watches football can solve that issue, and the Jets can't. So I'm not sitting here angry anymore. I'm not sitting in here demanding to win games or to fix this or fix that. This is something that you got to literally rip the boards off of the floor and rip out and level the ground. And it's the Jets are staring at, we call it the long winter, but the Jets have a real soul searching to do. There's a lot of things they can't fix, but there are some things they can. And this is rock bottom to me.
I can't disagree. And I think if you look at, for this regime and this GM in particular, this 6-year snippet of the drought, which we're going to autopsy in a deeper level this offseason, and the way we started this whole thing about how they had this 10-year playoff drought initially with 2 other regimes and 2 other GMs. Phase 1 of it was maybe trying to fix Darnold. You failed and you missed with that.
Yeah.
Phase 2 of it was going for the quarterback. You missed. They threw the Hail Mary for phase 3, and they completed it by getting it done. You just wonder if the window for it to really work went up in smoke when he got hurt in the first year of it.
I think
and
so.
Now he's just too far removed from being that guy. And there's too many other little issues that they're not well coached enough and they don't have a deep enough roster to paper over that you tried the Hail Mary, but it was a Hail Mary and it didn't work. And that's how your GM ends up 29-62. He will reach 100 games and not make the playoffs and probably have a 30 winning percentage, which is truly unprecedented in modern NFL history.
It's hard to do.
It's why it deserves, like, it's a whole separate other, like, hours and hours of analysis of what really went wrong here. At this phase, I'm not even sure that dude works here anymore, to be honest, because the fact that they didn't replace Greg Zuerlein the second after the Bills game shows me there's no serious working people in the Jets front office anymore. You got Joe Douglas probably on to looking for his next job because he doesn't have a contract. You got, I guess, Phil Savage still knocking around. And you got a bunch of other guys who have just been in admin for like 12 years. It's a shell company in the front office right now. That's how you don't replace the kicker. And look, maybe in some ways, Greg having them at 2-6 versus 4-4, because I think they'd be 4-4 with any replacement level kicker right now, is not for the worst, because that 4-4 probably was still heading towards 7-10 or 8-9,
right?
Or maybe best case scenario getting demolished in the first round just because the AFC is so bad this year.
And for
an
what?
8-9 team. And for what, right? The big issue here and the real problem is that it's not that Rodgers is awful. It's just that he is average right now, and he can't get a fucking play in. I mean, let's be honest.
It's embarrassing.
I have never seen anything like this. And I've watched the Jets for a long time. I've watched them with Petty. I've watched them with Zach. I've watched them with Matt Sims. I've watched them through everything. And I have never seen anything like this. And I have to blame no one but the quarterback. You're a veteran Hall of Fame quarterback, and you repeatedly cannot get the snap off. And I think Dan nailed it in our group chat. It looks like he's like waving off the pitch from the sideline. He can't get everyone lined up. No one is on the same page. And that, along with the kicks, cost them the game because they needed timeouts. They didn't have them. And the plays coming out of the timeouts were all terrible and never worked. And how an NFL team, when they know they need to go for 2, doesn't have a 2-point play ready and they have to burn a timeout, and then he throws an in-breaker 4 yards in front of the end zone, that's on him. And that's on a guy that you're counting on to be a Hall of Famer and a leader on your offense, playing like the 24th best quarterback in the league. He's not the worst quarterback in the league. It's not like we were dealing with Zach. He's just not good enough. And this inability to get plays in and make your offense so easy to defend because everyone knows exactly when you're going to snap the ball when you're not burning timeouts is brutal. And I don't even know who gave the quote on the Patriots today. It was some random guy I never heard of. Was effectively like, he can't move anymore. Like, period. No. He cannot move anymore. And teams see that, and they are going to feast on him because he's scared to rip the ball down the field. He can't move, and he's dragging the offense down with this thing against the play clock. That is him. That is not, the play is getting in. He is the one taking forever and leisurely moving around, moving pieces around to throw whatever 4-yard in-breaker he's going to throw next. And it's just not good enough. And the roster on paper has names that are good enough, but it's not good enough when you're supposed to be great quarterback is average. When you're supposed to be elite cornerback, and we'll get to him, can't make a play and is getting beaten by Booty on a game-winning drive multiple times and looks clueless and disinterested out there. When your left tackle, who is supposed to be at least good, has not been good this year. And you still do stupid things like don't fix your kicker and play Michael Clemens 40 snaps a game while he gets, roughing the passer penalties and can't get after the quarterback. So the Jets do all these little things in the margins, and that's how you end up 1-4 in one-possession games. And let's be fair. If Drake May doesn't get hurt in this game and the Patriots receivers can catch, the Jets lose this game by 15 points to maybe the worst team in the league besides the Panthers. So they're not even really close right now. It's a mess from top to bottom, but it's a particularly kind of embarrassing mess because when you're Rodgers and you talk the way you talk and you're supposed to carry yourself the way you do, and you can't do the basic fundamentals of getting a playoff, and when you're supposed to be a functional NFL front office and you don't fix kicker after the Buffalo game, you're acting wholly unserious, and all this other stuff kind of goes by the wayside. Let's start with the offense, and then we'll get to the defense, which did ultimately blow the game late. Explain to me, because we rightly get this question all the time. What the hell is going on with the play clock, man? And what is going on and what is wrong with this offense that had something going today with Brees on the outside zone and just couldn't stick with it? Couldn't stick with it. But what is going on here?
To me, and obviously I'm watching this game on TV like everyone else, to me it looked like Downing calls in the play. Rodgers, most of the time, doesn't agree with it.
Yep.
And even if he does. So there's two issues at hand. We'll start with the beginning. Number one, I think Rodgers is trying to be the OC at the same time. And it's literally not possible. It's not possible. And now he doesn't have the same relationship with Downing that he had with Hackett, where I'm sure he's a little bit more combative, which he shouldn't be, because when Downing really got his hands on things against Buffalo, it was the best it looked. But anyway, so that's number one. That's going to create... There was one moment that they caught on camera. It looked like Downing called for something. Rodgers said no, and then Rodgers was sacked on a third down.
Yep.
But number two, and this is probably my opinion even more important. This is just my opinion, what I think. I think he's getting up to the line of scrimmage, and he is so obsessed with seeing everything in front of him, because he said in the presser, I'm trying to get the protection set and right. I think he's so obsessed with having the perfect protection and knowing exactly what they're doing from a coverage standpoint, because he does not want to get hit and knows he can't move, or the other way around, knows he can't move and doesn't want to get hit, which you're asking everything to be perfect in an imperfect league. It's impossible. It's impossible. Do I think the Jets win this game with Tyrod Taylor today? Maybe.
Yes.
You're right. So. Like maybe they might. He can't move. He cannot move. And if he can move, he's not trying to move. So I think he can't move. So what that means is, if they bring more than 5 can protect, or however many you have protecting, well, that kills the play unless the ball is out. Or 2, if somebody gets beat, which happens in football, the other guys are paid a lot of money too, you got to be able to evade a sack, and he can't do that. So it's having this trickle effect of he gets up to the line of scrimmage, but to happen that many times is insane to me. At some point, snap the ball. And if you didn't know that safety was going to rotate and you read the coverage wrong, who fucking cares? Live another day, because you're getting sacked anyway, or getting a delay game and killing the drive. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. So it's just, that's it to me, is that they are playing offense with a quarterback that can function halfway. And it's a shame that Rodgers is banged up. He's got 3 different injuries. He's 40 years old. But nobody feels sorry for you in this league. That's the bed you made when you miss on quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. You called it a Hail Mary, Joe, and you were right. This was a bigger Hail Mary than a lot of people wanted to admit, because this was the only lever that Joe Douglas could pull. It was this or sign Derek Carr. And we all know how that's going right now for New Orleans, because he's either hurt or he stinks, besides the 2 first games of the season where his offensive coordinator had to basically call a perfect offense for him with no true dropbacks. So this was the options they were left with, because they can't hit on a quarterback. They can't develop a quarterback. They can't really develop a lot of young talent in the first place right now. How much of a stink does the almighty great draft class have on it right now that Sauce looks like one of the worst players on the team? Brees and Garrett are fine, although emotionally, I'm sure they're starting to lose it. Jermaine's hurt. And listen, it was a good draft class, but man, like, that's the one thing a Joe Douglas supporter throws back in your face every time. You're like, man, it might be time to move on from the GM. They're like, what about that draft? You can only do that for so long. Win football games. So that's where the offense is at to me, is that he's trying to be perfect before the snap. And that's a dangerous way to live, because that means you can never look at the first time they played New England. There was about 5 different dropbacks where he made a play with his legs. Oh, and that's why the Jets kicked their ass and it was their best game of the season. They don't have that element to their offense anymore. And look at all the good teams in football. All of the good teams in football have that element to their offense in the modern game.
Yeah, it's so hard to win in today's NFL if your quarterback cannot create with his legs to extend plays, to beat the blitz on third down. You saw Drake May before he got hurt. Like, you just take off. Even Brissett was doing it against the Jets because the Jets certainly have no pass. They have no pass rush integrity and no one can make a tackle. But
so undisciplined.
You have to have that ability to your game. And I can't believe we're talking about this before Halloween. It's not far away from the time where and this is going to happen sooner rather than later in my mind. How they go about doing it remains to be seen. It might come from Rodgers. It might come from the Jets. He's going to sit down at some point because of an injury for a couple games. It could end up being
been today.
Yeah.
And now it should be Thursday.
But they won't do it. They're stubborn. They'll trot him out there on primetime against the Texans after C.J. Stroud clowned him in the offseason, and the Texans are probably going to tee off on him. I don't know if it's after that game, during the mini-bye. I don't know if it's at the bye week. But at some point, it's going to be the hamstring. It's going to be the ankle. It's going to be something. They're going to say he's going to be out for a couple weeks, and we'll see Tyrod at some point. And down the stretch, like in this vacuum of time, it will probably be better for them. The bigger question is, and we don't have to talk about this in this episode, when are they going to have a real conversation with him about what the hell's happening in the offseason? Because you need to decide that like in the next 4 or 5 weeks or day one of the offseason. It can't be the far we drag it for a few months and it impacts the head coach and the GM search, because an immobile Rodgers isn't kind of what you saw today. It's like he's going to be like 20 or 30 for like 210 yards. And like no interceptions because he won't take any chances down the field. And like they'll pad his touchdown stats because they throw on 1st and goal from the 1. So it makes it look like his like numbers and QBR is better. I mean, the reality, if you watch that game today, he was a major liability. Like Brissett basically outplayed him, which is somewhat on the Jets defense, but also on his inability to move. And also like know your kicking situation. Don't take a sack to set up a 44-yard field goal. Get rid of the ball so it's a 30-yard field goal or 32-yard field goal. And again, have a play ready when you score a touchdown because you have to go for 2. So, it's a shame. Like, I'm a big Garrett apologist, and I think that comes across in a lot of my analysis. Like, he has played very good football since the Vikings game outside of the one drop against the Steelers. Yeah. And I don't get down on that guy because he cares. He plays hard. And he's been like fine. Like he's been productive. I think he's still, not that this matters, but like he's producing from like that fantasy expectation standpoint. He's over 100 yards today. He's got a touchdown 2 of the last 3 weeks. Him and Brees were completely fine today. And I don't want to lump them in with the Rodgers, Tyron, Sauce disappointment because they've had disappointing moments this season. They're still really good young football players. And Brees was averaging 7 yards a clip, and they went away from him. Any other team, Brees gets 22 carries today and runs for 160 yards and eventually breaks one. I'm happy they used Allen more, and I'm happy they used him in short yardage, but feel the tempo of the game. See Brees ripping off 9 yards a carry on outside zone. Stick with it. Garrett won on his contested catches today. He made plays. Devontae Adams, obviously, we're not getting what we want from him, but at least he's drawing coverage away from Garrett. Like, Devontae's got to catch that slant on 3rd and 1, period. Like, that's what he's here for. But that's not, those two guys aren't the issue. We got Quinnen back today and playing through pain and being productive. And he's been a little better, I think, the last 2 weeks. Not where he needs to be for his contract, but better. The rest of the defense, man, like, this was 22-17, and they did let New England go down the field and win the game. And multiple long 3rd downs. You said this last week, and I don't think you were being extreme with Sauce, man. Like, as it stands right now, you cannot pay this guy top cornerback money. And I want to be careful how I frame this because both you and I were very adamant that they should not take a cornerback with a top 5 pick. Not because we didn't like Sauce. We thought Sauce was great. We thought he was going to be a good pro. And we were wrong about taking Aquanu, who hasn't been great in the pros. The point that we had, though, is that can a cornerback be impactful enough to be a top 4 pick in the draft in this scheme and in today's NFL at all? Now, you can make a case that a guy like Surtain is kind of doing that, but it's few and far between. And you're seeing it now where it's swinging back, where Sauce is racking up penalties now. He can't tackle, and he's gotten worse as a tackle year over year. He's not involved in forcing turnovers at all. And now teams are not scared of going after him. The Brissett is throwing deep posts on a game-winning drive to, I don't know, their 4th receiver who had 4 drops in the first half of this game, and he beat him. And like that is wholly unexcusable. And you cannot have inexcusable. You cannot have a guy who was supposed to be great. That's a game on the line right there. And they're going right after him on a game-winning 3rd down. Now, how nobody can get home and how the Jets don't wrap up Brissett in other situations and Sherwood misses the open field tackle. I could live with guys like Sherwood and Mills and Oliver, who aren't fully there from a talent perspective, but are flying around and clearly care and are playing with the right level of energy. Reed does this, Carter does this. For Sauce, the disinterested like BS and then like giving up a game-winning play. That's what he did. He gave up a game-winning play. He dropped a game-changing pick six against the Vikings. He's made no game-changing plays yet this entire season. You cannot make him the highest paid cornerback in football when you got to pay Garrett, figure out maybe franchising Brees, and you got to find a way to rebuild this roster and maybe find another quarterback like ASAP. You can't sink all your money into that level of cornerback. It's so disappointing because the talent's unquestionable, but this Jets defense, man, it again, in a big spot to just fold like that to that group of pass catchers and that quarterback. I mean, how do you deal with CJ Stroud? How do you deal with Kyler Murray? How are they going to deal with Stafford when they play him? It's just a shame. I really, it's especially to see Sauce like effectively lose a game for them like that. It's
against,
brutal.
by the way,
just brutal.
Like factor in the competition level. It's the backup quarterback and a former UDFA wide receiver.
Guys just want him more. Guys just want him more than him.
Right. When he's getting DPIs against Justin Jefferson, it's not great because he's supposed to be able to match up with that guy, but you're like, it's Justin Jefferson. When you're giving up a game-winning, essentially, bomb to that team, what can you do for us? I mean, real talk. If I'm sitting here, say like tomorrow morning, I'm sitting there with Woody Johnson, and he's like, okay, I'm looking for somebody that's going to be ready to really turn this thing over the next year. Like we think Aaron's going to retire after the year. We're going to have a lot of void money to sit on thanks to Joe Douglas's incompetence as a GM for the next couple of years. But how do we, get some young talent in here and kind of flip the page? And if you look at it, one of the pieces that I could actually get some value back on would be Sauce. I wouldn't pay Sauce. I would trade him. So that's where I stand right now. Assuming I can get a first round pick back for him, I would keep Garrett, like you said. I understand you could find running backs later on, but I think Brees is a difference maker when they actually use him the right way. So I would prefer to keep Brees. But Sauce is the one guy that, because he hasn't been paid yet and is not even in his prime, that if I thought they did this with Jamal Adams. Now I think Sauce plays a more important role than Jamal Adams, but they saw that Jamal, 1, wasn't as good as he thought he was. 2, wasn't a position that they wanted to pay. And 3, there's teams out there that just valued him to the point of you couldn't pass on the trade.
Yep.
That's my combos would start with Sauce if I got in the chair today, knowing that, okay, I'm going to be drafting a quarterback probably this year. I have to turn over some of this offensive line. I have to rebuild the entire defensive line besides Quinnen Williams. That's where football starts to me. Like, look at the Lions. Watch every presser that Dan Campbell gives. Not presser, locker room speech that Dan Campbell gives. And presser, to be honest with you. I watch almost all of them because we talk about the Lions on our fantasy football show all the time. His number one thing he always cares about is, did we stop the run and did we run the ball? And when they usually double the rushing yards of the opposition they play. And that's why the Lions win almost every week. With Jared Goff, he completes like 18.
52 to 14 today.
Yeah. He completes 8. You want to talk about a quarterback that can't make plays with his legs? They're the one outlier because they're so fucking good at everything else. They run the ball. They're creative. They have skill talent. They have an elite offensive line. They have a coach that understands their identity. The Lions' identity is punching you in the mouth and being precise at quarterback. The Jets' identity, there is none, but they wanted a 40-year-old quarterback clearly to go out there and be a hero for them. And it's not possible if you can't move. It's not possible if you can't move anymore, which you can't. So the Sauce conversation is a tough one because, man, this is the most disappointed I've been in a homegrown Jets player in a long time so quickly, right? Like 8 weeks after 2 great years where you're sitting there. And I know
he's a different guy.
He's a really good person. Like, he's somebody that you would want to reward with a big contract and be one of the faces of your team. What happened? I mean, this is the combo where you're looking around and going like, did the priorities just change this offseason, or was the drive not the same? He looks nothing like the player he once was, which doesn't make sense at this stage of his career. And the Jet, yeah, they have a lot of, they need to have an honest combo with themselves. They need somebody to come in there and really tell them, like, who are the guys that we want to be a part of this thing turning around? And not all of them are going to want to be a part of it. I'll tell you right now. Like, some guys are just like, I'm not wasting away here, and I don't trust you. And if Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall or any of those young guys are like, you know what, I don't want to be here for this, I don't think Jets fans can be mad at them. I really don't, because it's their career, and the Jets have shown them nothing that they're going to do what's best for them right now. So it's a really hard combo to have, and it's a bad place to be. And we're gonna have a lot of time for this combo, but as I keep saying to people, I don't know who the hell wants to come work for the Jets as GM and head coach, and that's going to be the toughest thing for them right now, is figuring out, like, it almost makes you wonder, and I don't know if there's going to be a GM that could do this right now. Do you start to try to move some pieces at this deadline right now and get some assets back right now? And I'm talking about like more expiring kind of players, yep. But they don't have a GM, we don't think, that actually is doing anything. So I don't expect that to happen. I think the Jets feel like they're just going to set this thing to cruise control, see what happens. They'll win 6 games? Yep. They'll win 6 games. They'll have a pick that's kind of irrelevant in the draft, although this is a really weird draft, and we'll have more time to get into that. And they're going to be meeting with people, and they're going to be a tough sell, because if it's over for Rodgers after just this year, you're looking at a GM and head coach, and you're going, well, the pick isn't good enough that you're for certain getting your next quarterback, and we have some guys that are kind of probably ready to be somewhere else. And we're going to have a lot of financial decisions to make, and you have to carry the void money from the awful GM beforehand. It is really, really hard. The only thing I could say is for the Jets right now, and this is kind of what we hinted at the last show, is that it's gotten so bad so fast that maybe you can get out in front of it. Maybe that you part ways with Joe Douglas in the next couple of weeks here, and you're going to sit down and have some real football conversations with some real football people. And I go back to my plan of, you need somebody. It's almost what many years ago baseball did to the Wilpons with the Mets, where they've had Sandy Alderson come in, and Sandy was kind of this old school baseball man that was going to make decisions. Now, Sandy, it wasn't perfect, and things for that era of the Mets wasn't perfect. And listen, I think once again, ownership got involved and kind of made it hard for him, but he wasn't perfect by any means. But that's kind of the line the Jets need to do is right now, where you need somebody that is respected in the sport, that is going to have, I don't even know what the role is, Joe. I mean, what do you call it? Like, it's almost like VP of all football operations.
Yeah, it's like some kind of head of football operations.
Right. It's literally head of football. It's a step above GM is really what it's like. Senior, vice president of all football operations. That person is going to come be a part of the Jets for 2 years. They're going to conduct the GM search. They're going to conduct the head coach search. They're going to hire those guys and kind of get the Jets being back. Here's how low we are. Get the Jets back to being a normal football organization over 2 years so that they can try to start to build something again.
Yeah, you need an adult to come in that kind of role and teach them
how
pathetic,
to build. By the way.
Yeah. Teach them how to build it.
Pathetic.
But that's what it looks like now, because you have to teach someone to build an infrastructure. They need to rebuild their whole scouting infrastructure. They need to rebuild their whole analytics infrastructure. They need to rebuild their whole sports medicine infrastructure. They need to go role by role by role.
That costs money.
Why is this person?
I'm not convinced they're willing to do that, honestly.
Yeah,
I'm not.
Why is this person an SVP? Why is this person an EVP? Are they just here because they've been here? Are we just rolling over this coach because he's been here forever? We got to rebuild the entire org chart, how we do this stuff on the football side. Look at what we have and have some very tough conversations. And again, we need to see what's going to happen with ownership. We'll know in the next couple of weeks. But whoever, you have to hope that they outsource that. Now, they've done this in the past, and it hasn't worked, right? They did the Corn Ferry thing. It failed. They did the Charlie Casserly thing. It failed.
Yeah.
They're going to have to do a better version of that with an outside voice who can say, look, like, I'm going to be an interim, and this person's going to be an interim, like, senior person of football operations.
I think it should be Pete Carroll.
So, I mean, that's the closest suggestion I could give. And he's not perfect, and he's not a one-to-one comparison for Parcells, but he's won a Super Bowl. He has credibility within the league. It's someone like with that kind of profile and say, look, like, you did 6 years with this GM. That is an eternity. So I'll say this for the Jets. The one thing that's BS that's levied against them is that they're impatient. They have been too patient with their GMs and with their head coaches. They gave Maccagnan 5 years. They gave Douglas 6 years. They gave Bowles 4 years. They gave Saleh 4.5 years.
Because of that reputation.
Yeah.
The Jets listen to everyone.
Yes. So like when you're selling it, like you're going to be able to tell a GM, like you're going to get a 6-year contract and you're going to get your 6 years here. So you have plenty of time. So think for the long term and how you like gut this thing out and fix it. The hope is, again, that the forward-thinking thing to do the next few weeks, beyond doing the obvious thing like cutting Zerline tomorrow and signing literally anybody else to be the kicker before Thursday, is trade what you can before the deadline within reason. That get the veterans off the roster that might be able to go to a contender, make an impact. Mike Williams, I've seen Conklin's name thrown out there. I don't know if they'll do that with him, but like it's guys like that. Reed, like if you're not going to sign and pay Reed, like
Reed's
get a pick.
Actually, you might get like a 4th-round pick for him. Yeah.
Load up on your middle round pick so you have ammo to move around in the first round if you need to. We have no idea where they're going to end up picking. There's a lot of other bad teams in the league this year. They could pick anywhere from 3rd to 12th, depending on how the rest of the year goes. Which again is depressing to be talking about. We'll bring back draft season soon, and we'll have time for all that stuff. But get ahead of it, right? So you don't have to act like there's going to be some crazy phantom run here. I think how they're going to handle quarterback, I don't know. I would like them all to be adults and to have a real conversation at the bye week. If let's say they're 2-9 at the bye week or 3-8 or whatever it is, have a real conversation with Rodgers and mutually agree to part ways and have it be like clear and done the second the season is over. So you can not have that sort of weirdness hanging around the org. Yeah. And that might I'm making it sound easier than it is because Rodgers has an ego. You could damn sure bet he's watching what's going on with the Packers and how the rest of the league is enjoying him being bad and the Jets being bad. And I am sure there's a big part of him, and this part may win out, that says, no, if we do this, this, and this, I'm back for one more year. I'll be healthy. I was banged up all this season. I'll be another year removed from my thing. Give me another year. And that voice may carry out because there's no strong other voice in the Jets organization who's going to be like, no, especially if Woody is distracted with other stuff, and he's going to be distracted at least the next few months, if not the next few years. So that is very much a scenario that could happen. So that's when it gets really complicated and convoluted. Now, look, you could say, I don't necessarily agree with this, but you could say, look, could Rodgers get healthier at some point? Does he help sell as sort of a bridge to a GM and a head coach where you can be competitive in year one? You make it understood with them that you get a year with Rodgers. Then you can pick your own guy and you could start fresh and we'll start the clock then. Maybe. But man, that's like complicated and convoluted. And they just feel further away than that. And they have so many different nuanced decisions to make. And just the general, unfortunately, Rodgers is kind of dovetailed into this overall energy problem around this team that, Saleh was an issue. Clearly it's carried over with Ulbrich. They expect bad things to happen to them and they carry themselves in that way. And they're slow and they're deliberate and they're mopey. I can't believe I have to say the word mopey so much, but crazy. The play clock folds into that, right? It's just like slow, mopey, woe is me. Rodgers looking around to blame anybody but himself. And it's just pathetic to lose to this version of the Patriots. This Patriots team wanted to lose today. They were basically playing to tank. Horrible. Look at how they played before the half. Look at the lack of urgency. Like most Patriot fans, outside of getting the digs in at the Jets that they should, like they want to lose as many games as possible, especially once May got banged
roster.
up. And it's like, they can't even win in that spot. Even the 2016 team, which is the closest comparison now, which you and I hate. That's what we did a whole docuseries on. It's a lot like this team in many ways. It was, Fitzpatrick, of course, is not Rodgers, but it's like the washed veteran quarterback. He was coming off a big year.
Off that year.
Yep. And they had Marshall, Decker, Revis, Cromartie. They had veterans, man. Matt Forte, Angold. They had all those guys still. And even that team was 3-5 through 8 games. The Jets are 2-6, and then the bottom, they got the 3-7, and that's probably where the Jets are going to be too. It's a very similar situation. And you know what happened in 2017? It was the tank season. That team was actually far more enjoyable in the 2016 season.
They were gutsy.
And then you rinse and repeat with the Darnold era in 2018. So plenty of that to get into, and we'll get into it on a very quick turn this week because somehow the Jets are playing on Halloween and on primetime. I hope there's no one in the building except Texans fans. Listen, I should be clear about this because a lot of the dialogue comes across in games like this. I this is just me. I never judge anyone for how they're a fan because
Right.
it's
Me too.
sports and it's a hobby and it's not about the team. You control what you can control. We can't make the Jets play better. You can't make the Jets play better. And I get that people go to games. It's beyond the team. You go to spend time with your friends and family. You go to do something. And hopefully if you're a Jet fan, you have a sense of humor at this stage about it. We try to keep a sense of humor about it. So if you want to, you're still going to these games, like, God bless, have fun. Like, you probably book travel around it. You're planning a tailgate. Go enjoy yourself. So there's nothing wrong with that. Woody Johnson is not being, it's not make or break for him whether you have tickets or not, unfortunately. All that owner money comes from the revenue shares and the TV deals. If the Jets sell 5,000 less season ticket packages, Woody's still going to be one of the richest people in the world. It's not going to make a dent in his pocket. Now, I still get on the other end, if you're like, screw these guys, I'm not paying for my season tickets. I know it's hard to sell and complicated with the seat licenses, but I fully get that too. And saying, I'm not going to buy any of the merchandise from the Jets. I'm not going to go to the games. I don't have season tickets. I don't go to the games that often. I go to 1 or 2 a year. But I don't judge people either way because it's a complicated thing. And you have to kind of control what you control and enjoy the sport the way you can control it. And for us, like, this is what we do. We are specialists in talking about a very bad football organization. Like, that is the whole basis of this. So we're equipped to do this. We're going to watch the games. We're going to be ready to talk about it. We're going to empty out the entire notebook as we get through this part of the year and into the offseason and how we're going to cover this whole thing. So you want to keep watching the games. You don't want to keep watching the games. I get it either way. But Thursday is going to be, one of those times, like, they deserve to have an empty building there. They deserve to have that empty building. And I hope they get flexed out of SNF for the Colts because nobody wants to see that, man. Nobody wants to see Joe Flacco likely beating the Jets again on primetime like we got for Jets-Browns last year. And that's a damn shame because I feel bad for the fans who deserve a fun season. We deserve a fun season, but I feel bad in particular for people who build their schedules around getting out to these games, home games, away games. There were Jet fans out there in New England today. And it's shitty. And I just wish parts of the organization and some of the players cared more. And it's not all the players. I don't want to paint them all with a broad brush. There are plenty of guys out there busting their ass playing through injuries, but not enough of the key guys. Either way, an embarrassing loss and a fair point now at this stage to say this season's over before Halloween again. And that hasn't been the case the last 2 years. They were kind of hanging around a little bit. But this year at 2-6 with this mope, it feels that way. CR, any final words or thoughts? We're almost at 40 minutes here.
Oh, man, I do feel bad for the people, that do base a lot of their fall around going to the games and it being and hopefully, like Joe said, you could still have fun. I've been to a lot of bad Jets games over the years. A big thank you to everybody that stays rocking with us through this. We see you out there, still subscribed, and I've seen plenty of comments and messages that are like, I'm not watching the team anymore, but I'll still listen to Badlands. That's really cool to me, and it goes a long way for what Joe and I and everybody at Badlands is building, because we're not going anywhere. And we really, really appreciate that kind of support. It's so funny just listening to you talk about the other end of the other outcome is if they don't just rip out, everything and start from scratch. I'm buying into my theory that it's just going to be the Rex Ryan 2025, Aaron Rodgers, one more try at this. Cause it would not shock me if no matter what, Woody just buys into Rodgers trying it one more time. If they're really going to run it back with him next year, I do think you need a GM and a coach here that have one eye towards the life after Rodgers, whether that's drafting a quarterback, whether that's building the team the way you want to build it and not thinking about what's best for him, which every move they've made over the last year has been what's best for him, right? Sign Mike Williams, trade for Devontae because Mike Williams isn't working, sign Tyron, draft Olu in case Tyron gets hurt, which he always does, on and on it goes. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. It's amazing as this team sinks lower and lower, they do get more interesting for us on the podcast, and we're going to have a lot to cover.
We're witnessing history here. We're really covering history.
There's not many times in my life that I could tell you in, how many months. I don't know. I don't have the slightest clue of who the Jets coach, GM, quarterback will be a couple months from now. That's unbelievable. Honestly, that's really unbelievable for a team that pushed all their chips into this year, financially with the way they set up contracts and just across the board. So it's tough, but we'll still be here, and we'll see how it goes at MetLife, because that could get ugly real quick.
Yes, we'll be here talking about whatever ugliness is to come in MetLife and whatever decisions come or don't come in this offseason. We've seen some unique situations with this team. This is by far the most unique in figuring out how they attempt to work themselves out of it. And again, to echo CR's sentiments, appreciate all the Discord chatter, all the engagement that's still there. It's good to have a big group to commiserate with. Also, shout out to Sarah, who bought a sweatshirt the second after the game ended. Every time this happens once a week, someone buys a
really
piece
nice
of gear
bit.
As the game ends, that it makes everyone in the group chat so happy that we're like, we just want to give this person a hug. This is incredible. We love it.
It is a rewarding part of the day.
Yes. We can control, and we try to make this as enjoyable of a community as possible, even if the Jets do not play ball with us. So
Jets culture is unbelievable. Like Jets fan culture
is great. Yeah,
Jets organizational culture, horrific. Jets fan culture, a true 10 out of 10, because if you're still here, you're not going anywhere. Like at this point,
you're as loyal as it gets.
There will be a day, hopefully. I'm even looking at the clock. I'm like, am I be alive long enough that they're going to turn this thing around?
That Gray Beard podcast.
Yeah, it's insanity. But there will be a day where there are actual competent people making decisions, and this team wins 9 or 10 games and makes the playoffs.
Wow. We're not asking for much. Just talking about a playoff game would be incredible. So yes, we'll be back on the feed tomorrow. Jake and Paul, the other guys, will have flight plan, and then we'll have a quick turnaround for Thursday Night Football. 2-6 Jets. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll talk to you soon.